But let's watch this first clip.
We are spending our time, our money, and we're taking enormous risks on behalf of a country that geopolitically is not significant at all. The interesting thing is, most Americans have no idea that this is true. They don't know how disproportionate our attention to Israel and our spending on Israel is relative to the rest of the world. And if you want some sense of how disproportionate, India and China combined, neither of which is a strong ally at the moment, combined represent more than a third of the entire world's population. Both are rivals economically, both are rivals militarily, at least potentially. And our relationship with them has gotten worse, or is at the very least languished, because of our relationship with Israel, because of the bandwidth consumed by tending to it, and also because of some of the inevitable conflicts that have arisen because of our support for Israel, which is engaged in an extremely controversial, which is to say hated war in Gaza, which is not even really a war. It's a massive displacement of people and killing on a grand scale of unarmed people, of unarmed combatants, of civilians, of women and children. And the world sees this, and the world rejects it, and the world hates it. And so Israel's really last remaining ally of size, other than the UK, is the United States. And so there's a huge cost to this. But again, most Americans have no perspective on just how disproportionate our commitment is, because they marinate in lies about this relationship, mostly from our political class, also from the media. But really, if you were to lay the blame on one group in the United States, it's our elected leaders who continuously lie to us about the nature of this relationship, its significance.
Yeah, absolutely. Our leaders have been lying about the fact that Israel has been taking a boatload of money from us. Not only that, but our second largest recipient, which he points out in this piece, is Egypt. And the only reason why we're giving Egypt a ton of money is at the behest of Israel. So you actually could clump that all together into one. So here we are giving a ton of money to Israel, spending a lot of time on Israel. And for what geostrategic purpose is it? One thing he brings up is the fact that we are being bossed around by Israel. And why are we allowing ourselves to be humiliated?
The second thing we can do is get some freaking self-respect and stop being ordered around by a client state. That's not good for us. It's not good for them. It's not good for anybody. It's like being screamed at by your children. No normal parent would allow that, because it's totally destructive. It's not good for you, and it's not good for the child. And that is exactly the relationship that we have with the state of Israel. In fact, not in theory, in fact, it is a huge country and a tiny country. The huge country supports the tiny country. And that's a pretty nice thing to do. Whether it's wise or not is a whole separate conversation. But if you're going to have that relationship, a parent to a child, you cannot be yelled at, humiliated, spied upon, bossed around by the child, by the person in the inherently subordinate position. You can't do that. And you can't be shamed into ignoring things that are quite clearly not the behavior of a subordinate ally to a big brother ally. For example, spying on the country that makes your economy and your defense possible, which the Israelis have been doing for generations. That's a fact. One of them very famously was caught, Jonathan Pollard, who's an American citizen, taking real secrets, like actual military secrets, and sending them to Israel, which promptly sent a bunch of them to the Soviet Union, which was our arch rival, our foe at the time. And that happened, and he went to prison, and then somehow he got out of prison and went to Israel, where he continues to denounce the United States. And anyone who says anything about it is attacked. Oh, you're an anti-Semite. Well, it's nothing to do with anti-Semitism. That's insulting. Why would we ever put up with that? Why would we put up with the attack on the USS Liberty that everyone's so afraid to talk about, clearly targeted on purpose by a country we're supporting, Israel? And it's somehow shameful to say that? Why? Why is it shameful to say that? Who knows why it's shameful to say that, but it shouldn't be. And until we have some self-respect, not anger or hate, but just dignity, it will continue. In June, for example, during the 12-day war, such as it was with Iran, the U.S. and Israel versus Iran, bombing on all sides, during that short conflict, IDF officers in the Pentagon, foreign military officers in the Pentagon, and by the way, they're not the only foreign military officers in the Pentagon, to be clear. There are NATO officers, they're from other countries, British, but there are a bunch of Israeli Defense Force officers in the Pentagon that week, And during that week, ask anyone who works at the Pentagon, they enraged American Pentagon staff by just barging into meetings, giving orders, making demands, and nobody did anything about it.